Hello everyone. Today we are going to work on animating what I would consider a complex landing gear animation system here. So we're going to work on this nose landing gear today, and I picked that because it's going to be the most complex animation of this aircraft, and so figure if we do that we should cover most of the bases. In animating our landing gear, we are going to need some data refs, and I have those right here for you if you want to copy those down. But these four data refs are the ones that will be used for this nose gear, and it'll be the same for your other landing gear apart from the steer angle. But that's all you need is those data refs there, and let's get right into it. So I like to animate with empties, and so that's how we are going to start. And I like to get kind of all my empties in place first, so I'm going to Shift A and add just a plain axis empty. I'm going to hit G to go ahead and grab that and bring that kind of over here to where we need it. And real quick before I forget, while I'm selected on this empty, up here on our items information right here, and if that window isn't up, you press N on your keyboard to bring that up. Right here, this XYZ Euler, we're going to change that over to this, however you pronounce that. And notice it has that little tip that says no gimbal lock. The reason we're changing over to this is it's going to help with some of your animations. Visually, you probably won't even tell that there's a difference in what we're doing, but having that set there will help eliminate some of the funky things that you could get in X-Plane from your rotations. You need to set that before you animate. Otherwise, if you change it, you'll lose your animations. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna grab these wheels real quick. I'm gonna tab into them, and I've got selected there at the center. So I'll then do a Shift S and cursor to selected. Then when I tab back out, I can grab my empty, and I can do Shift S, and I can do selection to cursor. That just makes sure that that empty is perfectly centered on our wheel, so when we do our rolling rotation, that it won't look off-centered and funny. So with that empty still selected, I'm going to Shift D, and I'm going to just kind of place the rest of our animation stuff real quick. So we're going to need a animation at this joint here. I'm going to Shift D again. We'll need an animation up here at this joint. Let's see, we're going to also need an animation for the shock strut itself. So we'll Shift D and bring that over here. And I'm going to grab that strut, tab into it. With these two boxes over top of each other, if you toggle that, you can see your see through things. And again, I've got these 2 points selected, and so I can Shift S, cursor to selected, and now I know that I can align my empty with that. So I'm going to grab this empty that we brought over. I'm going to Shift S, take it so that it's centered on that. Then I'm going to hit Z so that I can jump over to my wireframe view real quick and get zoomed in here pretty well. And I'm going to hit R, and I'm going to rotate that so that our Z axis of this empty lines up with the axis of that cylinder. So I'm going to put that there, and that's going to help in the animation of that cylinder there. Jump back here to solid view, again hitting Z to bring up that menu. And let's continue. Actually, so while we're right here on this unit, I'm going to come over here on our on this box tab here, I'm going to change that empty name. I'm just going to call that, let's call it the strut. And now I'm going to Shift D to duplicate it, right click so it doesn't move anywhere. I'm going to change the name of this second one to steering, because the steering up here also pivots around that cylinder, and so we're going to need that, an empty for that steering animation in the same location. Alright, let's see, we'll grab this empty down here, and we're going to Shift D, we'll bring it up here. And we are going to, and we'll fine tune kind of their location later as well, but we'll do another Shift D. We're going to have a pivot point here. Shift D again, we'll have a pivot point here, and now you're going to start to understand why I said that this is a complex animation. Shift D again, we're going to have a pivot point right here. Shift D again, we've got a pivot point here. Shift D, pivot point right there. There's a pivot point up here. Pivot point up here. Okay, I think that's getting closer to having everything. I think Shift D, or I think there's going to be another pivot point right here. And probably one more up here. And now I should mention, this is my method. It's possible that it's easier to do this with bones. I've never fully understood how to use bones. So yeah, so we're gonna. This is my method. There's a good chance there's a better way. But okay, so with everything positioned as it is, we can get into kind of doing our actual animations. So down here on this one, this is the one we snapped to our axle. I'm going to go ahead and change that name. So this is going to be empty. Let's keep these names all kind of organized. Nose wheels. And while we're on that real quick, we can even, over here, we're going to add our data ref. And so this one is going to use that tire rotation. So we can just type into here like so. Pull this out so we can read these. Let's see, and I said tire rotation angle degree, and we want the flight model 2 version of that. So click on that, and once you do that, you have to come back in here and add our index like that. My index is 0. The reason the index is 0 is because this nose landing gear is the first gear that I created inside of PlaneMaker. Your indexes start from the very first one, so the first one on the left in PlaneMaker is 0, and then the next one is 1, 2, 3, and so on. And so that's how you figure out your index. Okay, so that data ref is there, and we'll be ready for when we're ready to animate. Let's see, we'll grab this empty over here. Why is it doing that to me again? There we go. Oh, it's because I was dragging. Okay, so this empty, we can call this lower scissor. Actually, I guess we should call it lower torque link. And then we got this one up here, which would be the upper torque link. Now on those, we can do it. We can throw that data ref in there for them as well, real quick. And so they will be our vertical deflection. So our tire vertical deflection, and that's based on meters. We'll need to remember that later when we're putting in our values. So that there, remember to add your index for that. Go ahead and put that on this one as well. Let's see. That we've got one of these. Let's just find it in our thing here. So our strut. So the strut's going to use that vertical deflection. And let's see. Okay, I think that's it for our vertical deflection data ref. Let's go ahead and grab our steering one that we did, and we'll give it a data ref. And that's going to be the tire steer actual. Actual degree right there. Okay, and so everything else is just going to use that that deploy ratio data ref. So we can go ahead and grab those and put that in here. Let's see. Right, gear deploy ratio. Okay, so let's get to some actual animating real quick, and then we'll get back to naming all that stuff up there, but we've got a bit to animate. So I like to start at the bottom. So we're going to start right here on our rotation. Oh, and before I even do that, I want to select all of these empties and keyframe their current location. This is the location everything was modeled in, and I like to have my frame number 1 keyframed there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of the empties, and I'm going to come back over here, location and rotation, and just mark that on those. And that's just so that after all this animation and everything, we can still come back to frame number 1, and it's in our resting position, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, with that, we can also do a little bit of parenting. So let's, we've got our wheel, we can shift select to the nose wheel animation, Control P into object, and now if we grab that empty, it moves our wheel. I'm going to hit N to give us a little more room. I'm going to slide this out of the way a little bit. Alright, so for your tire rotation, it's fairly straightforward. We're going to let's see, let's go ahead and jump up. No, let's even start at what frame number you start on doesn't matter, so I'm just going to jump up to frame 10, and we'll start there. So frame 10 on that, and this is just a rotation, so let's only keyframe for the rotation, and I'm going to key that again, and then we're going to jump. We can jump 1 frame or we can jump 10 frames. It doesn't really matter. If you jump more frames, it's easier to see the change in between, but for the rotation, it's really not that big of a deal. So here I'm going to rotate, and we're just going to say 90 degrees. and then I'm going to key that again. If you prefer, you can turn on the automatic keying. That's something I just, every now and again it gives me an issue, and so I prefer to manually do it. But so I've jumped another frame. I'm going to rotate another 90 and come over here and key it again. And we'll jump one more frame, rotate by 90, and key it. Okay, so we're going to jump back here to our first keyframe where we were at 0. And now over here on our object panel, where we've got our value under that data riff we added, we're at 0, so we're just going to hit this key to keyframe that 0. We're going to jump to our next keyframe. We know that value was 90, and we can just do 90 because we're basing it off of angles, and our rotation is also based off of angles. So we can go ahead and keyframe that. Jump one more. Now we're at 180. Go ahead and keyframe that. And we'll jump one more. And we're going to go ahead and put 270 and keyframe that. And X-Plane should be able to figure it out from there and just continue your rotation around. If you're having issues, you can put in more keyframes and give more values, but that should be sufficient. Now let's go ahead and we can jump. Let's say we jump up here to frame 20, and we can do our vertical deflection, so basically the suspension of our nose gear. To do that, we're going to grab our empty for the strut, and actually let's parent some stuff to that strut. So let's grab this our nose wheel animation. Just grab the empty. We don't want to grab the wheels. We want to grab that empty. And then over here with our empty strut, I'm going to hold Control and select that, and then we can come back out, Control P to parent that to object. So now the animation of our rotating wheel is parented to the suspension that will move up and down. We also want our strut object itself here to be parented to that empty, so we'll get a hold of that, Control P, so that strut will move with that empty as well. Let's see, we also want to trying to think. Yeah, that should work for now. So let's go ahead and grab just our empty for the strut. And for this one, on this, when we get to the last frame of our animation on this strut, we want it in the fully down position, and the reason is that will help when we animate the retraction, because when your gear retracts, the gear will be fully extended. So we're going to animate up first and down second. I'm going to come up here, and for this one, it's only a location, and we can go ahead and keyframe right there, and then we'll jump a frame, and we will, again, trying to get a view where I can kind of see my strut so I know how far I can go. So now I'm going to press G to grab that empty, okay, and then I'm going to press Z and then Z one more time, and so doing Z twice locks that to the Z axis of the empty, and so that it's actually moving correctly. If we only did Z once, we'd be moving up and down to the world, and as you can see, that creates a weird animation. So here we are locked to that empty. We're just going to go to the full up, and our full up is going to be right about there. Go ahead and set that and mark that animation there. And for this one, I'm actually going to use some frames here. So let's jump up to, I don't know, let's jump up to 30, and then we will grab again on that Z of the empty, so pressing Z twice, and we will bring this down. Let's see, I'm trying to think, point. Oh, shoot, I forgot. Forgive me, I forgot the value I was aiming for there. I had it measured out. We're going to go for like 0.75 at the moment on this one, but that will be based on the travel of your specific landing gear. But anyway, okay, so we've got it extended. Let me make sure that looks about right. I'll probably have to come back and fix that later to make it exactly correct, but so we've got it in our fully extended position. We're going to go ahead and keyframe that. Come over here from our side view, take a look at it. Okay, so now, because we used extra keyframes, we can watch it kind of animate rather than just jump from one position to the other. And that's just going to help as we animate those torque links to follow along with it. Okay, so we want to mark our position. So you're fully down, and this you'll get this information from X-Plane. What your value is going to be over here. You can use that, get that using like data ref editor, and use flying your aircraft in X-Plane to see these values. But your fully down value is going to be 0 because it hasn't been deflected by the ground. So we're going to go ahead and mark that as 0, and then we'll come back up here to our fully up value, which I already did a bunch of playing around in X-Plane, and I know that that value per the X-Plane data ref is going to be 2.54. Excuse me, 0.254 for my particular landing gear here. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got those two saved, and then if you watch that value, it automatically figures out the in-between for us. So, okay, so that's set. So now what we're going to do is grab these two torque link animations, and we're going to use them to make that link follow. I'm going to go ahead and hit those overlapping squares so that we can kind of see through and see what's going on. So right here you can see that we're lined up with kind of this knob that sticks out off of the axle, and we're going to try our best to animate to make sure that this stays connected to that. The reason that this piece does not have an animation, I have an animation out here and up here, is because this piece here is the hardest to see, and so if there's an error, I'd rather that error be hidden in here. Alright, so let's jump over to this empty here. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it for as close to center on that as I can. So this link here, we're going to shift select this empty and control P to parent that to that object. And then this link here, I'm going to shift select to that one. And I guess before I do that, let's make sure it's centered. It actually looks like it's pretty close, so yeah, shift select control P to parent that. And then this empty down here on the lower, we're going to shift select the upper empty and control P so that it moves with it. So now if we grab this upper link you'll see that that's all moving together. If we grab the lower link, we're just moving that lower bit. We can also grab the, well, we'll do that in a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and we need to animate from right here. So it matches here, but we're not actually even using that value. So right here is our full up, and we want to match that. So we're going to go ahead and we've got a hold of this empty for the lower, and we're going to rotate that. And I'm going to go a touch high because we also need to rotate our upper. I'm going to rotate that just a little. Maybe come back to this lower, rotate until I feel. I'm just looking at this section right here, trying to get that to look fairly well lined up. Now that I feel like I've got it pretty well lined up, I'm going to come over here. We're just doing our rotation, and I'm going to keyframe that. And I've got to remember, I also moved this one up here, so I can keyframe that. Here's a part where having the automatic keyframes on might be helpful. And you're welcome to do that if you prefer. Okay, so now we're going to jump to the end of our animation, which was here at frame 30. And we are going to grab our lower here, and we're going to rotate it down a ways. Grab our upper, rotate it. Grab that lower, rotate. We're just trying to get this lined up again. And that looks pretty good to me. So, again, we've got to come over here, mark that rotation, and mark that rotation. And now what we want to do, and this is why having all those extra steps, extra keyframes in between is helpful, is we want to step through and make sure. So here I notice that it's getting a little tight. But so as you can see here, our position kind of moves. Like right here, that is starting to get in deeper into the axle there, and so at this frame here we could go ahead and grab and adjust that position just a little bit so it lines up better, and then mark those keyframes to kind of smooth out that animation there. And that's up to you, and that's part of why I've chosen to hide the disjointed part inside here, because from a view out here like this, the user will never see that isn't perfectly jointed together. Okay, all right. Now, let's remember, we still haven't put our data ref to those, so even though they're animated, they're not going to match. So we got to go ahead and grab that. We've got a 0, and that's correct because we're in our down position. So we're going to hit keyframe on that one, and then same over here, keyframe on that one. And then we'll just go to our up position here and use that same value, which we used for the strut, which was, for me, 0.254. Save that there, and this one, save that there. Okay, so now we've got our vertical deflection, and our tire should rotate. And let's do one more thing, and then maybe we should jump into the sim and just make sure that things are coming across correctly. So that one other thing will be our steering. So let's see. We've got, I know this is our whole steering unit, and so that's got to be parented to that empty. that I labeled steering. So I'll control and select that empty. And let's see, where are we at here? We went up to 30 on that. So we're gonna, let's see, Control P, so that steering box is parented to the empty. And I think we'll start up here at well, frame 40. Why not? Again, these numbers don't matter to explain. It's the numbers you put over here on your actual object that matter to explain anyway. Okay, so we're going to start up here at frame 40. I've got the empty for steering selected, and we're going to go ahead and keyframe that position there. We'll jump, I don't know, five frames. And I'm going to rotate, and this is another one where we want to rotate on that empties Z axis. So pressing Z twice. And we're going to rotate over, and I'm going to go, let's see, it says I'm going in the negative, so we'll do negative 90. I think this gear can actually only go to 85, but we can animate to 90. Explain will only go as far as it needs to. Okay, so that's animated to negative 90. We're going to go ahead and put our rotation keyframe in there. We can come up to another keyframe, rotate. Oops, and see, there we go. I didn't put on the Z, but there we go. Back to our Z. 90 puts us back in the center. I'm going to go ahead and keyframe that too, just because I like the fluidity of it. And we'll go one more. We'll rotate on the Z. 90. And I'll mark that keyframe there. Okay. Anytime you do parenting, make sure you're in your neutral position. That's part of why 40 here was keyframed at neutral. So let's see, we need to parent quite a few things here. Let's see, we want our strut. Strut needs to be parented to our steering. So control and select that steering. Control P. And actually that might be the only thing we need to parent, because everything else is parented to that strut. Let's see if our steering now works. Oh, no, because I didn't parent this. So this one also, our torque upper needs to be parented. Control P to that steering. Now everybody should be turning together. Oops, wrong way. Very good. Okay. So let's see, on our steering empty here, let's go ahead and put in our values for that. So we're centered 0, so we're going to go ahead and hit 0 real quick. And let's see, for our going to the right, right for X-plane's value is going to be a positive number. We rotated at 90, so we're going to match that here. And then going to our left, that would be then negative 90. We'll match that there. On your rotation here, I mean, we could rotate that all the way to 130 or whatever, but as long as your numbers match, your wheel won't turn too far. That'll be based off of the data ref value that comes back. So if your wheel can only turn to 20 degrees, the data ref will only read 20 degrees, so your animation will only go 20 degrees. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we should have rolling tires bouncing suspension, and turning wheels. So let's why don't we go ahead and test it? Let's go ahead and export. So we go up here to this little water drop deal and hit our export button. Give it a second to do its thing. I guess I should get X-plane coming up. Now your object should already be attached to your aircraft in Plane Maker. If it's not, you can go onto Plane Maker and make sure that you attach your object in the MISC Objects section. And then we can go ahead and test what we have so far. We're waiting for that to pull up. Just thinking about the next step is going to be getting everything to retract. I want to take this animation and I want to bring it back to 0. So I'm going to go ahead, selected on just our steering empty. I'm going to come up to say frame 60 here, and I'm going to put us back to that neutral 0 position and keyframe that. And the reason I'm doing that is purely because that's going to help in these later frames. We want that landing gear pointing straight when we retract it. Here we go. Here we go. Just gonna follow it. Notice wheels. So our wheels are rolling and our suspension is working. Gonna have to figure out the wonkiness of that that steering animation there, but suspension wise and rolling, we're looking good. Okay, so I found the solution, which has me a little surprised, but I changed the rotation back to this XYZ Euler here, and that seems to have fixed my issue. I'd say 90% of the time having it here causes that specific issue, but for whatever reason this time bringing it back to that fixed the issue. Now because I changed it, I had to reanimate. Luckily it was, it's only really these 3 keyframes. But so I had to re-keyframe the animation and then reapply those keyframes over here on the object. And just remember when you start your animation, so before you change this, jump all the way back to your resting location here, your 0 back here, and then go ahead and change it, and then keyframe where you're at, and then jump back up to where you were working and modify that stuff, and that'll help you keep everything kind of in sync. So, but I guess I can show you that real quick here. Where's that volume at? So here you'll see that now our animation follows as it should, which is good, and we also, you'll see that the wheels roll nice and easy with the ground. We get a little bit of throttle going here. You see the suspension start to compress there. There we go, we're rolling. You get a nice smooth rolling animation. Okay, so let's continue on with our animating here. So let's see, I'm going to jump up to 70. That's just my personal preference. I like to try and keep stuff kind of separated. Alright, here's where things get extra tricky. depending on your landing gear, it might be a whole lot easier than this, but this has a lot going on in it. And so, I'm trying to think of where exactly I even want to start. Probably here. So I parented, while I was trying to figure out that issue, I parented the steering empty to this one, and you'll see that here if I grab that. So we're kind of working our way up, and so as things get parented, it gets parented up higher and higher, and so now everything is connected to this joint here. I'm going to also go ahead, we can grab this whole unit here, and that's going to get parented there. And so now if we start moving things, and you'll notice those hoses that look kind of funny. Hoses are quite difficult to animate, and I'm not going to go over that in this video. But basically you just have to break the hose into a whole bunch of pieces and then animate all those little pieces. And that's something that probably is a whole lot easier to do with bones. But again, I don't know how to animate with bones. So, alright. So now we're on to our retraction. And so with our empty selected here, we can go ahead and add that data ref in here, our deploy ratio. And remember to put in your index number. And let's see, on our deploy ratio, we're going to split this up a little bit. And by that I mean from 0 is our all the way up, and 1 is all the way down. But we want a little bit of space in there for the animation of our doors, the landing gear doors. And so from 0 to 0.1, the landing gear, I'm going to have the landing gear not move, but from 0 to 0.1 I'm going to have the landing gear doors open. And then from 0.1 to 0.9 the landing gear will do its movement, and then from 0.9 to 1 those landing gear doors can move again. And so you'll see that as we go through here. So let's see. We are in our down position, so we can go ahead and throw that value in. And let's actually, I think I'll try and go through and do that on all of these real quick. You know what, I might even, I'm going to speed up the video so that you don't have to just watch me drone through this. But all I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to go through, I'm going to rename my stuff, and going to make sure that they have the data ref, the deploy ratio data ref on all of them. And since we're in the down position, I'm going to mark all of them as 1 in the down position, and I'll also keyframe for all of those in this down position. Alright, so now I've got everything, all of my empties have now been given their deploy ratio data ref with the correct index, and they have all been given a value of 1 on our keyframe here. I keyframed here at 70. They're all just in their neutral down position, and I gave them a value of 1. I jumped one more frame, and I gave them all a value of 0.9. And that's because we're using that from 1 to 0.9 for the movement of our landing gear doors. So now we're going to go ahead and start parenting everything together. Depending on what you want your main pivot point to be, it can go a few different directions, but I think I've decided I'm going to kind of pivot everything off of this. Most of this stuff starts to get hidden inside the aircraft as it's pivoting up, and so I choose that this joint here is going to be a pretty important joint, and I want it to be solid. So what I mean by that is we're going to take our this pivot point here. Now remember, this is what all of this down here is parented to at the moment. Our steering and everything gets parented to that. And from there, so I could come up here and parent to that, but I think I'm going to parent along our drag link instead. So I'm going to grab down here, so holding shift, get a hold of this empty right here, and I'll control P to parent that. So now we're moving off of that. We will then take this, and I'm gonna parent the actual drag link to that part of the rotation. We could parent it up here, but I want this joint to stay solid. All right, and then we're going to grab this, and this is going to be kind of our root rotation. So we're going to take our rotation down here, shift select this one up here, control P to that, and so now you'll see that when we rotate, it's all going to rotate off of that. And I just wanted to look at something real quick. Okay, so on our fuselage, we've got this follow-up door. I'm not animating doors right now, but that follow-up door, you would end up basically parenting it. You could parent it to this empty that we're connecting everything to as well, since it's going to stay pretty solid to that. But okay, so now we've got that much working together. So let's go ahead and parent the rest of this stuff. So this let me think about this for a quick second. I think to allow, because there's going to be some rotation between this and that, we don't want to just parent this directly to this empty. And so I'm just going to real quick shift and duplicate that empty, and then I'll change its name. Well, for now that 0.01 is fine. So then this guy here will get parented to that 0.1, and we can then that 0.1 empty. So that one there, and then we're going to shift select. Okay, so we've got that empty we just created. I'm going to select our other drag link and parent that, and then if we rotate, we'll see that moving there. Okay, let's see. I'm going to real quick, I'm going to hide this specific drag link empty so that it's easier to see this one that I'm going to parent all this other stuff to. So this one, because it's part of that rod will get selected there and parented, and that's going to be this guy here, so we'll parent that. We've also got this here, which is technically part of that rod, so it can get parented up here. And then this thing gets parented to that. This rotation here is for the this little piston here, so we're going to let's see, we will, now we could parent it to this and then animate it with a location. I prefer kind of to animate with rotations, so I'm going to parent this to that, and then we can just animate it with a rotation, and this gets parented to that. So if we come back here real quick and rotate, we can see what we've got connected so far. Alright, we've got this here, and it's going to be parented up here, and then this would be parented to that. This one here will get parented there. So I'm just, I hope this makes sense. And if it's a solid connection, then we're just connecting via the parent. So that's going to rotate that there. So now I've got all of this based off of that. Alright, and then we've got a rotation here, so we'll come up here, parent. Oh, actually we don't want to parent that there. This will be based off of this, because that's the solid connection. Parent that. And then that, I'm trying to think, this guy here, I think that's already parented. So parented to that. Oh, it's parented here. We actually don't need that parent, I don't think. I think this empty can go away. Okay, so this will then be parented to that rotation there. If I'm following my own logic here correctly. Excuse me if I start to get a little quiet. Just means I'm thinking a little bit harder about what's going on. Alright, let's see. So I'm going to unhide that. Our main empty here. And now if we grab that and rotate, we've got everybody rotating with us. Okay. So from this point, again, we've got all these empties. They've all been keyframed, and they're in their neutral down position for 70 and 71 with that different value. I'm going to now jump up to like frame 100 just so that we've got plenty of room to work with inside there. And now we can start moving things. So to do that, we're going to want to show our fuselage, make it transparent, and here we can begin moving all these parts. I do want to look real quick. I'm tempted to try and animate that door real quick so that it moves with everything. No, we'll make it all fit. I can animate the door another time, but Okay, so let's get started on our actual movement. Yeah. So we're going to grab our empty that everybody is basically a child of. We'll bring this up, somewhere in this general area. And the reason I'm not bringing it all the way in is because we also have a little bit of rotation here. Oh, that doesn't work. So our nose wheels should end up inside here, something like that. But I'm actually going to undo real quick because I'm going to change one of my parents real quick because that doesn't work. There we go. Okay. If you're going to change a parent, you want to do it when you're in a neutral position, otherwise things get mixed up a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this. He's currently parented to that rotation down there, and I want to parent it to this one up here. Just make sure I'm on the right one, and Control P, and it'll eliminate that one and add it to this one. So now I should be able to rotate there, but if I were to grab this and rotate, it doesn't. Perfect. Okay, so let's see if we can make this all fit in here. I want to say it's something like that. And then this rotates just inside the door there. Something like that. Going to do that real quick so that I can make this fuselage stuff not selectable, so I can select through it. Alright, so that looks pretty good. That's about the position I expect that nose gear to end up in. Now we just got to take care of all of this, which is a mess, but we can make it work. So for a moment, I will do that so I can't grab that one empty. So maybe I'll just hide that specific one. Alright, so this will have rotated up this way, out of the way some. This is where having some engineering information on the specifics would come in handy. I've watched these this particular landing gear retract many times, but that doesn't mean I know the exact rotations we're expecting here. Okay, so we're lining up pretty good there, although this is not where it should be because it would be down here, so then that moves this again. So at this point it's just a matter of grabbing the these individual empties and just making everything fit specific to the location that you're going for. Let's see. And then I'm going to go ahead and start keyframing some of this. You can always change it, so but to kind of, so I can start to preview what I'm doing. So we're going to go ahead and keyframe that. Should I bring this guy back and keyframe it? Let's see. What else have I moved? This. Here's a part where it's probably a good idea to just turn that automatic keyframing on. And yeah, because I missed that one. Just missed this one. Alright, so now that we've started to get some of it, we can see our movements here. And this is why I put a big space. I mean, we've got basically 28, 29-ish keyframes to work with, and you can stretch it out even farther if you wanted to view this animation, because you'll see that things are getting out of whack there, and so then you just go in and tweak your rotations so that they better line up. So here we are, and we're in our retracted position. And so we need to go now with all of our empties, all of our animation guys here, and on our value we're going to do 0.1, not 0.1, and that's because we still have landing gear doors that need to be moving. So we go through on all of them and give them that 0.1, and then jump one more frame and give them a 0. Okay, and you're just going to do that with all of your empties, so that you've got some leeway in there to animate your doors. And yeah, I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'll get back to you and we will check it out in the simulator. Alright, so as you can see, I've gone through and I've tweaked a bunch of that, trying to get all the animations to line up just right. And then I went ahead and grabbed one of these, you can see. So down here at our ending animation, or our ending of the keyframes, we've got 2 keyframes at the end with a 0.1 and then a 0. That's to provide to animate the doors. Alright, so at this point we can go ahead and make sure you're saving often, and then we're going to go ahead and export this, and we'll take a quick look at it in the sim and just see how that is translating to the sim. Alright, so here we are in the sim. We're going to go ahead and just reload. Actually, game pause at the moment. Let's unpause it first. Reload our aircraft. Jump outside. Okay. So it looks like everything is in the correct position for our down. Go ahead and release our brake. Bump up the throttle some. Obviously the rest of the aircraft has not been animated yet, but there we go. Our wheels are rolling. This runway is dirt and small, so I don't think we can get this thing airborne quick enough to bring up the gear, but you can see that our gear are bouncing as they should. Let's see if there's any chance we can get this thing off the ground. Hey, there we go. Hit retract. Alright, bring it back down. Sweet, there we go. So I hope that's helpful. If these videos are proving to be helpful, please leave a like, leave your comments, and subscribe. It would help. Thank you.